Welcome, Barry, to the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Yeah, no, great to be here. Great to speak to you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Good conversation planned. But before we do that, I'd love it if you give a quick introduction about yourself and the company to our audience.
Yeah, so I've recently joined Intellias, a company based actually originally from Ukraine. We're a software engineering company, I suppose, delivering solutions, not just in IoT, but IT across the world. In about 15 years, I suppose, in IoT. So before it was called IoT, it was machine to machine, I guess we called it. I built my first IoT platform maybe about 10 years ago, and I built several since then. Horizontal platforms are industry specific in one few cases. I built energy platforms, and now working with Intellias growing the business here.
So let me ask you from your perspective, what are some of the kind of key trends that you're seeing across different industries in IoT? Just things that maybe really stand out to you that people should be aware of, and what's the importance behind them?
Yeah, well, I was recently giving a keynote speech in the United States, and everyone's talking about AI, obviously, and Gen AI. So the way that I describe it is I done my master's in artificial intelligence last century when it was really cool. And now it's become cool again. And why has it become cool? Well, it's become cool partially because of IoT. We now have a reasonably mature technology where we can deliver the data that is required for IoT. The way I describe the early phases of an IoT solution is to collect the data, communicate the data, correlate the data. That's the basis for AI models. That's the first things you have to do for AI. And now, of course, we've got Gen AI. It is... everybody's using it. Whether you like AI or not, you're using it. If you use the internet, you're using it. So that's obviously one of the big trends. And the second one that I'm seeing, which is maybe less obvious to people outside our industry, is digital twins. So digital twins are receiving a lot of hype. And if you ask me what a digital twin is today, I'll probably give you a different answer tomorrow. If you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. Well, there's certainly a lot of hype around it, and there's certainly a lot of business evolving with it, yeah.
The digital twin space has been interesting because it's been a topic on our podcast many, many times over the last few years. AI too. AI has obviously been more popular recently, but digital twin, you're right. Everyone kind of explains it in a different way, has different how it's beneficial, what it can be used for, the value, and so forth. But I'd be curious to hear from your side, what are the challenges that digital twins might present? I mean, maybe explain kind of what digital twins are and how you see their value, but also I'd love to hear the other side of it. Like, what are the challenges?
At its most basic, I mean, you're taking a digital representation of a physical object. That's the most basic. Now, what we then do on top of that in IoT, let's say, is we add real-time data. So if you have a building, a construction building, it's actually a living entity. It's changing all the time. And therefore, you need to add the real-time data, which is generally coming from IoT devices, on top of the BIM, the information model for the building in this example. But the next generation, and where it's really becoming useful, is when we add artificial intelligence on top for prediction, where the digital twin is going to go. So we predict maintenance and things like that. So that's the key. And the challenges that I see, especially in several industry verticals, is that they're focused. Let's say the industry vertical is focused on the technology. Now, technology, they might be experts in their specific industry, but they're probably not experts in digital twins, and they're probably not experts in IoT. So they're getting themselves all tangled up in how to create a solution, a digital twin solution that adds business value to them, instead of defining the business value and then using companies like my own to create the digital twin, where we can do it because we've got experience, because we're years doing this, but we can do it quicker, faster, cheaper, etc. So, yeah.
Are there certain industries that you're seeing have a bigger impact with the use of digital twins than others?
We're getting a lot of requests from construction, where construction companies have tried to move into digital twin space, and they have to a certain extent with BIM models. But when they try to add on the sort of IoT layer on top, and then even further go into AI, they're spending a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time without getting the business outcome. So both during the construction of a building, or imagine some manufacturing plant and a gas refinery, during that construction and post-construction, they're not sure how to actually extract the data correctly to add the business value. So again, I come back to sort of let the business, the industry vertical look after its business, and then the experts in IoT will come in and look after the technology. I mean, our job is to demystify the technology, to take away the technology question so they can solve their business problem.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point to mention is, these people who are reaching out to certain organizations like yours to adopt a solution or adopt technology, they honestly don't care as much about the technology as some people think. They want it to just work and operate because they're experts in their business. So they're going to rely on the technology experts to help guide them around those potential challenges that exist. And speaking particularly about the construction space, why is construction often not able to kind of solve things kind of effectively? Like, what are some of the challenges that really, I guess, are tied directly to construction that you've had to overcome?
There's two, like I was saying before, there's two sort of areas. One is a building is being constructed or it already exists, and they have information models there. Now, when you're trying to add real-time data on top of that, very often what they're doing is trying to change their data model. And what we've found is what you have to do is just enhance the data model. Okay, so you're just adding to it. So it's almost like a backward compatibility issue that they have. So they're getting themselves tied up in very complex data modeling, which they don't need to do. And IoT, like I say, is quite a mature technology at this stage. So they shouldn't be so focused on understanding how everything is done for them. Focus on what they want to achieve. I've been with one company, and honestly, they created a constraint-based artificial intelligence model. They've been doing it for 3 years, and it's not going live, and it's never going to go live. It's great innovation, and it's really cool to see. But where's the return on investment? So construction companies need to always be focused on that particular aspect of it. Where's your return on investment? And the other thing I should add, I mean, when we talk about IoT, we talk about let's say it's a numbers game, it's scaling, it's lots of devices, lots of data. That doesn't mean you start with a big bang. You have to start small, or let's say start in a modular approach and then keep adding to it. I mean, that how do we scale to millions of devices in IoT? Well, we don't onboard millions of devices from day one. And that's part of the problem that they're trying to solve a really big problem instead of cutting it up into smaller pieces and it's scaling as we know in IoT.
Yeah, we've seen that lead to success for a lot of organizations who are able to kind of break it up into chunks. And a lot of these technologies obviously can build on top of each other, which is great. Or once you've deployed certain, connectivity and different aspects of a solution, you can usually expand it to other use cases. And it also helps with the buy-in from stakeholders internally, as once you start seeing these wins and you start seeing the ROI, the returns on these projects, it just gives more encouragement to the rest of the organization that we need to figure out how we can continue to expand and scale. And that's where everybody wins.
It's exactly what you said. I mean, when you're looking at the stakeholders in some of these construction companies, for example, they're going to build a skyscraper or an oil refinery or something. And if they're saying, okay, we need to add on X million on top from the start. And what we're saying is, no, you don't need to add on because this is a scaling business. This is how we do it. And so it's much easier for stakeholders to understand at each phase, they're going to have an investment. They're going to see a return on the investment. And therefore, it's not trying to eat the cake in one go, if you know what I mean.
So you mentioned AI and you mentioned models and things like that. What, just generally speaking on the AI front within IoT, where do you kind of see the biggest impact in kind of organizations bringing AI into these IoT solutions?
I would say the biggest challenge that we're facing is that everybody's asking for AI without really knowing why they want it. So, for example, in agriculture, AI will have a big impact and is having a big impact, whether it's sometimes predicting the yield of crops, whether it's predicting the health of animals, that sort of thing. But what the agriculture industry, they're asking for AI without really understanding what they want it for. They're living on the hype. What we do is we ask them to take a step back. Okay, let's see what you want to solve. And some of these problems are not solved by AI. They really aren't. So it's not always an AI solution for them. With the, let's say, disruption that's happening in agriculture with precision farming, you're talking about greenhouses or you're growing without sunlight and all these sort of things. It will need large volumes of data, well structured, which is what IoT is giving as the basis for AI. And what I think is that Gen AI will have a big role to play here because what Gen AI can do, if you look at the medical industry, And what we're seeing is Gen AI can help speed up the process of creating products. And it can help speed up the process of decision making in agriculture. And you may not always understand what the conclusion or how the Gen AI has come to the conclusions it has, but it certainly gives you it speeds up your decision making process. What we're seeing actually in agriculture many times is they always want the human at the end making decisions. So the AI is giving them insights, but they don't trust it enough yet but that will come. That will come over time.
Do you think in the agriculture space, when we're talking about AI being used and obviously IoT too, do you think most of the challenges that industry faces with adoption is around technical elements of it, or is it just like a lack of understanding of the full capabilities of the technology and trusting them?
Well, a couple of things. When you're asking about that, I was thinking about a farm actually in Brazil that I worked with, and the first thing that they asked for was 5G. Okay, and by the time I started working with them, they had 5G installed, and they had sensors everywhere, and an incredible amount of data, and it almost was a really advanced IoT AI farm. I couldn't see a return on the investment, so they actually had brought people in who are IoT experts, AI experts, and almost changed the business of their company. They're a farm. So what I then advised them to do was just take a step back. Let's look at the use cases where we're going to see a return on investment, and then start to work from that. So the technology is not necessarily their challenge unless they make it their challenge, because it's a mature technology. We have been around IoT for a long time now. A lot of the solutions we can deploy at the click of a finger, whereas a farm or an agricultural company will take a long time to develop that solution. So they need to take a step back every now and then, and maybe rely on the technology is mature, and rely on the experts is what I would say.
There's a lot of hype, and there has been a lot of hype in AI with IoT, 5G, just different elements of all these different technologies. And if organizations are thinking about it from like the technology forward, I think it's the wrong approach versus the use case or the end user backwards. I think that's where you really got to figure out like what's that thing we're trying to solve? What's the business problem? What's the value to us to do that? And then when they're able to do that and figure that out, then you figure out what technology works best to kind of yield those results. And I think sometimes that's a mistake companies make.
I said to one construction company, I said, okay, what is it that you want to build, and why do you want to build it? And they had a hard time describing that. And I said, okay, how do you know what or how you're going to build something if you haven't described what you want to build? First is actually the service or the use case that you want to solve. And that is key for the stakeholders in the companies. Because if I'm coming up with this super idea for genome agriculture with seeds and analytics and AI, then my stakeholders have to understand what the benefit is to my company. Okay. Long before we come to technology, I can describe any IoT service or use case with that technology before I start talking about sensors, I start talking about the communication protocols, etc.
Being able to bridge that gap when you're talking to a customer between their vertical expertise and the technology, the IoT AI, and making kind of connect the dots as to when you need to be thinking about which elements and what matters to who with it internally is super important. And if you can satisfy and start to really think about that business value and what's actually worth investing to solve the problem, then all the stakeholders should ideally be happy. And then you can go to work figuring out what technologies matter, which is going to work the best. How are we going to scale, or how are we going to go through a pilot? How are we going to test this whole system, and then also reach hopefully scale to see that benefit, and then build from there.
Yeah, it was a shock to my system a long time ago. The first IoT solution that I built was smart metering. I guess and when I was talking to some of the energy companies or utility companies, let's say, they used a completely different language than me. And that was a bit of a shock to me at the time. Now, that's 10, 15 years ago. That should not be the case. All of us understand if I'm building something in agriculture, well, I've done many solutions in agriculture. Therefore, I understand their language, So I'm not going to be an expert in it. Never. That's not my business. My business is IoT. So therefore, you need to have some domain knowledge to be able to bridge the gap, like you're saying, between the technology and the industry vertical.
There are a lot of companies who will enter in verticals, and this is like just if you think historically about the IoT industry, when it transitioned from M to M to the IoT, everybody was in a race to build a platform, right? Just build a horizontal platform that can do anything. We can build any solution you want. And then companies started to realize, well, that's probably not the way we're going to win business, is just to say we have a platform that can do anything. We actually need to be a little bit more vertical specific. And then they started to make vertical specific platforms. And then that kind of evolved into actual end-to-end solutions that solve a particular business problem, because that is how these businesses in these different verticals can more easily understand what service you're providing them, what value you're providing them if you're looking to work with them as a customer. So I think that's been a very big transition that has helped bridge that gap, is being able to promote, market a solution that speaks to them, speaks to that end customer, address the business problem, explain the ROI, show success stories from potential other customers, and really just to speak their language. And I think when you do that, it's just kind of goes back to fundamentally how we as people purchase anything, whether it's in the business space or in the personal space, is we have to be able to relate to it and understand it. And it needs to be personalized or tailored to us. And that's where I think IoT is finally kind of getting to. And that's, I think super important.
That's when I said it's a mature technology. I was kind of laughing when you said about the way that everybody wanted to build their own platform and it was a horizontal platform, etc. You may have seen a presentation I was giving 2 days ago, because I showed how we did it 10 years ago. And it showed how that does not work anymore. You can have a horizontal platform that does energy, does agriculture. You have to focus on the use case and going back to that. So one of the things that we've seen, actually it's an evolving process for our company. We decided that we're not going to build sort of digital twins for verticals or whatever. We're going to focus on accelerators. So it gives you a faster, cheaper deployment, but it's nowhere near the end product because you want to go specific, adding the modules on top, which is very much in keeping with the way that we've thought that IoT has evolved. 10 years ago, you just mentioned you had a platform and you were out selling to everybody and anybody. Well, that was probably a natural evolution for us all.
At the time, it made sense. People were still trying to understand what the technologies are, trust the technologies, like just buyers in general. Like, what the heck are all these different elements of a fragmented, industry and solution, and how are they going to be pieced together to solve my problem? And it took us time to get there. But if you look at other industries, I mean, having that platform seemed to be the base foundation for what you would need to even be able to build on top of it and get to even the application layer of this all, with the hardware, the connectivity, and so forth. So it made sense as to why we started there and how it evolved from a horizontal platform to like a vertical platform, like, smart agriculture. It can do everything in agriculture, which is great, but they still need to understand what are the point solutions that are available and what problems are they actually going to solve for the agriculture organization, the farm, you name it. But that's the same across all the industries. And I feel like we're finally getting there with people realizing solutions are kind of the solution to the IoT industry scaling and ability to grow adoption.
And if you look at the hype around, we were talking about digital twin and AI, they're going through the same sort of evolution at this stage where someone is coming and telling us, we want AI for agriculture. And we go, no, you don't. What you want is a solution to your problem. We will give you the solution, but it may or may not involve AI all of the time. Well, the way I describe it, IoT has become cool again because we're the ones collecting all the data for the AI, and the AI has become cool. So IoT is always like an accelerator for AI, but if we don't cut through the hype and just give everybody AI models, then honestly, we're doing a disservice.
I think with the education that's where the education really comes in is, once AI blew up, like we had, ChatGPT came out and just AI just took off and everybody's just like, oh, I need AI. So, but nobody knew what that meant. Like, what do you mean you need AI? And companies were saying, we're now an AI company, but were they really an AI company? Are they truly doing AI? Most were not. And so for companies trying to satisfy that internal need of needing to check the AI box, and then also trying to find a company that truly does what AI does, that was very difficult and led to a lot of failures, and still does to this day. People kind of falling for that, right? But one thing I think is very important people understand is how well connected AI and IoT actually are. If you think about AI needing data in order for the models to work, to train them, and to improve and enhance the end result, that data from the physical world requires sensors and requires IoT. So when you bring those together, it's a very, very powerful thing to see how IoT powers AI, because it is literally the thing that will pull data from the physical world. And once you understand how those two are connected, you can start to piece together and see how these solutions exist and what actually they can accomplish.
AI will not be the solution for everything. But if you've got the foundations that are correct, which is generally coming from IoT, the devices are collecting the data, it's being communicated, it's being correlated, and then we're going to analyze it, act upon it, and automate it. AI has a great role to play in that, but we just have to, like I said, cut through the hype and make sure that we're advising our customers correctly in how to use AI. There was an interesting conversation I was having with an energy company. It was a refinery, and I was saying, yeah, you want to use AI? And I said, what do you want to use it for? Do you want to use it to reduce your training costs? And they said, what? No. I said, well, do you want to use it to increase safety into it? Well, no. And I said, well, why haven't you thought of those two things? I mean, if someone is on site, they're remote, and we've got an LLM and they're being advised to do things, we'll produce the competence required for that person. There's a safety issue. We've seen, video analytics where we can detect safety issues. And they weren't thinking about that. And I say, but that's the use cases that most people are not thinking about. You're just telling me you want AI for the sake of it. So that's not a good foundation for your business going forward, let's say.
It's been an interesting thing to watch, the hype and get to where it is now. I mean, you mentioned Gen AI, and it's just these companies, I think the education component of it is super important for people to understand. That's when we started IoT For All many years ago. It was kind of in that stage where we were at the horizontal platforms and people were just trying to understand, like, what the heck is AI? What are all these technologies? What can they do for my business? What problems can they actually solve? And we were just like, most businesses, like we said earlier in the conversation, care about their business and their industry. They don't care about this technology, but how can we make them feel more comfortable with understanding what these technologies can do when put together in the right way, and not be fearful of the fragmentation and all the different components. So that was a big deal, bringing people together to help talk to them in their language.
Many years ago, and I done it honestly out of frustration, where I was working in the manufacturing industry, and we were being asked to put artificial intelligence into lots of solutions. And I wrote an article for IoT For All, using artificial intelligence intelligently. I wrote this 5-6 years ago. So we still have a long journey to go, but IoT is a journey. It's not and we're all on it, and people like yourself and myself have been on for many years, but it's not stopping. So with each new iteration or new technology that comes out that we have to explain or bring business value to our customers, well, and that's our job. And I think the maturity of IoT now is fantastic. It's much easier than it was 10 years ago. So now we're at the state where let's really add business value everywhere.
Yeah, and I think people are starting to understand that's what you need to be thinking about, right? Is what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and what's the value you're going to get out of it, and then the solutions are built in accordance to that. And then when they're kind of, in a sense, resold, it's sold in a way that is less focused on the technology and more focused on, here's what these technologies can do for you from a business standpoint. And I think that solution selling has become a real key driver in these solutions being IoT being adopted more widely. And that's what's been most exciting for us to see.
As I say, we seem to have got a boost by AI becoming cool again. So IoT is cool again. So now we're back on the radar, and it's going to be an exciting next few years.
I guess before I let you go here, just if our audience wants to learn more about what you all have going on, maybe follow up on this conversation with any questions, reach out in any way, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, you can get me at Intellias. Just contact Intellias.com. We're a global company, so we're working just about everywhere in the world, every time zone. I love having these conversations. I love discussing it. So if people want to contact me, this is our DNA. This is what we do.
Well, Barry, thank you so much. I'll definitely make a note to check in with you in a few months, and we'll maybe jump back on and kind of talk about things and where they're going, because this is a great conversation. Just seeing from your perspective how you've seen the industry evolve into where it is now and where we're going. And that obviously is rapidly changing. So it'd be good to just touch base and put some more content out there for our audience.
Excellent. Great to talk to you, Ryan.